Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we are in our 31st year, I interview writers and sometimes other brands of artists about their talent, what they're working on, what they've accomplished in the past, what they might be planning for the future. It's a pretty wide net. We have had on, besides writers, painters, sculptors, musicians, actors, all kinds of artists. So if you have an idea for a guest who might be right for the writer's block, writer or other brand, look for our address at the end of the show. We'd be glad to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that the writer's block and all the other original programming for and about Cape Ann is a product of cable access television. It's a wonderful community service, and you don't get it with Dish. So you stick with the writer's block, stick with cable. I'm very happy to say this evening we do have two guests who are writers and artists and astronomers, a very, very rich combination. Welcome to the show, William and Susan Waller.
Thank you.
Brother and sister team who have written a wonderful book about their father, artist Marvin Waller. First, I want to ask you, Bill and Sue, something about your background. You both live on Cape Ann now. How did you migrate up here from, I know, Manhattan? You were born in Manhattan, Susan, and you were born in Mount Vernon. How did you migrate up here from the New York area?
My father met Roger Martin in New York, and he would come every summer with the family to paint the light and the magic of Rockport, Cape Ann. And eventually they found a house and they moved here. So I was in the 3rd grade, Billy was in the 2nd grade when we moved. And here we are.
Many years
Very
later.
happily here. I love it here.
I'm glad. I know Roger Martin, he's been on the show.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Mari in the acknowledgments.
Right. Mari is,
Roger's daughter, who was a help with putting the book together.
Yes,
she's a
helpful.
wonderful girl.
Yes. Yeah,
And she's a great performer.
yes. I used to run into her once in a while at the bookstore before
Mhm.
bookstore.
She's at the Sawyer Free Library now.
Yes, I've seen her there. And I also want to add, I talked to William, who's been on the show. So welcome back to you, Bill, in your under your astronomer hat. And
Right.
It's interesting when people combine those two talents.
And you also had my mother. She was on first.
Yes,
Pat.
that's right. Back in the 90s.
Yeah.
When we were all a little bit younger.
Mhm.
I want to hold up just briefly the cover, and we're going to JPEG this on. The editor's going to put on a more visually perfect image. This is the book. Marvin Waller, your father, who was an accomplished artist and architect and had other talents, and this is really like an exhibit catalog book. It has many, many of the oils, many of the paintings, and it also has a directory about their provenance and dates and other information. Where did you get that idea for the book initially? Let me start with you, Sue.
I just thought it was important to do it because I really believe in my father's artwork, the excellence of it. And I know that when we had the shows at the Sawyer Free Library, and when Henry had the Annie at the Blackburn building, people loved that we had the drawings next to the paintings. So when we did the book, I put the paintings and the drawings together so that you could see how they were. I basically did the artwork. Billy really helped me with the writing, with Daughter's Reflections and the Prelude. you know, which described all the paintings in the book. So that was definitely a collaboration.
Well, Bill, let me ask you, what was the process? Did you write something, Sue looked at it, Sue wrote something, you looked at it, and you also discussed which paintings to put into the book?
I left it to Sue to pick the paintings. I was a fan of her idea of combining the larger paintings with the smaller studies for the paintings. There were several paintings that had quite a few studies
Just
for them.
one painting.
That was the
That
dock,
pier,
the
pier
pier.
painting.
Yeah. And I really liked how that was. I'd seen that in a Rembrandt etching show, how you see the work being developed. And so I was a real fan of that idea, which Sue suggested. And we also had shows in the past where we mounted paintings and drawings together. And as Sue notes, the drawings are just out of sight. They're just incredible. And so I pretty much left the artwork to Sue. But the process was basically her coming over to my house where I have a computer, and I would be typing up stuff with her lead for the daughter's reflection, etc. And then Sandy, my spouse, also came in when it came time to making Excel files for the listing of the paintings and the drawings.
So you use some of your science background and computer savvy, and Sue, you were using your art
Yeah,
savvy.
I don't even have a computer.
You don't?
So, no, I don't have TV. I have, you know, videos and DVDs, but just a History Channel alone, I'd never get anything done. So,
Well, you must be the only person on Cape Ann without a computer.
that's how I feel. But that's okay.
I was told recently I could be on a freak show as a man with no tattoos.
Man with no tattoos, that's
I
right.
don't have any tattoos either.
I want to talk about some of the paintings, at least 3 of them. And the first one I want to talk about, and the editor will impose that on the screen now, is a wonderfully titled, wonderfully beautiful, beautiful painting, Sue and Bill Before They Were Born. So
Yeah.
the editor's going to put Sue and Bill Before They Were Born up for a minute or so, and we're going to talk under it. Can you tell me first, Sue, how did your father do a painting of you before you were born?
He had us in his mind's eye. He painted it in New York. We were in the city then. And I wasn't born yet, neither was Bill. And he painted that painting.
Oh.
So he knew that he was going to have 2 children. I think, you know, that they look just like us.
Don't I look a little black? I can't remember.
No.
So Bill, this is not a poetic, imaginative title. Say your father imagining
For real.
them, you and your sister before you were born. It was actually painted before you were born.
Right. Call it a little bit of prescience.
And you think it does look like both of you,
Yeah.
Boy.
He had blonde hair.
a boy and a girl.
Yeah. And I had brown hair.
And this is before any kind of ultrasound, before you would know the
Oh, no
sex of your
ultrasounds.
children before they were born.
I don't even think they had ultrasounds then.
Yeah.
But it also highlights my father as a family man. He put great stock in family, and I think he drew a lot of good sentiments from the notion of family and children.
It's wonderful. Before we go to the next painting, I want to go back to family background a little bit. I want to ask you, Bill, in a family of artists, how did you turn out to be a scientist and astronomer with all that math and all that physics?
Born that way.
Sure. Well, I think that I am the product of my father and my mother. Uh, my father also trained to be an aeronautical engineer, but he got into Caltech, but at that time his folks didn't really have any money to speak of, so he ended up going to Brooklyn Tech, which is a little bit different than Caltech. And at that time, he made the decision to go into art, but he had the chops and those
Scientific mind.
the quantitative chops, which did him well, served him well when he became an architect.
Sue, you are an artist and you studied as an artist, you exhibited as an artist before getting into teaching as Bill did. Did your art come from your father's influence directly?
Both Billy and I knew who and what we were going to be from a very early age.
Mm.
Billy always knew he was going to be an astronomer with a family, married with a family. And I always knew I was going to be an artist, an art teacher, and have a family. So we are very lucky that we both always knew who and what we were going to be. And I went to art school to cut my learning time in half. I learned with their equipment that printmaking wasn't for me, you know, and I majored in painting. So I'm no good till I'm dead, but that's who I am, you know, and I owe a lot to my father. He taught me a lot. Everything that I've taught, he taught me. He took, you know, I go into that in the book.
Yes, in the introduction.
All the particulars, all the technicalities, he taught me. I couldn't have asked for a better mentor than him.
Beginning with the brushes, right?
Yeah, and the paint. And
Very,
he
I'm
went on.
always interested in where influences come from. We have two boys, one's a scientist and one's a musician, and neither of us is a scientist or a musician. We have no idea where they came from.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure we focus on Marvin Waller and go to another painting. The second painting I'd like to have our editor push up on the screen is Bathers at Plum Cove. Because of its local importance, everybody knows where Plum Cove is. So we're going to look right now at Bathers at Plum Cove. And can you tell me something about that painting, Bill?
Yes, it's one of his more abstract paintings. I happen to have that in our house. I'm in the house that I grew up in, a granite house on Granite Street in Rockport, and it's prominent in the library, and it's a fabulous painting, and it's evocative of Cézanne with the surfaces. Get the right hand here. The way multiple surfaces are interacting. To make the rock formations and the sand and the trees, and Cézanne worked with surfaces in a similar way, and this was brought out in a review in the Christian Science Monitor, and that review ended up being published November 23rd, 1963, and guess what happened the previous day?
Yes.
Yes.
You mentioned that in the book.
Yeah, John Kennedy got shot. And so I don't think that my father's review was paramount in people's consciousness.
Sue, I want to ask you about
Several drawings that are in that painting, and he made the painting to go with those drawings. He had done the drawings at the Art Students League in New York when he was studying with Reginald Marsh. And the woman on the left that's bending over, that I considered was his best drawing. And the group on the right, he did a drawing of that. But he improved the drawing with this painting, which was awesome. We had a Gliclé print and I brought the original out to it, and I'm like, oh my God, he improved it. So Dad usually did 1 or 2 drawings and then painted. It was very unusual with the pier painting. He did like 6 or something,
Hmm.
8 drawings that made that one painting. We also sold a glyclay print of that too. We don't want to break up his work. We want his work to go into a museum. We haven't found the right one yet, but that's where it's going. But we can make glyclay prints. James Eves at Cape Ann Glyclay does a wonderful job. We did a glyclay print of the checker players, and Billy and I brought the original over to Greg Fox's, and you really couldn't tell the difference. He does them on canvas and they look great.
Yeah, fabulous.
I want to mention the book's publisher, because the printing was done by Jerry DeFazio,
At Daily Printing.
and they've done a little work for me, and they are very, very, very fine establishment. Jerry does excellent work.
Yes, he does. But we've been very lucky with everything that, you know, have helped, all the people that have helped us.
And Sue is not an easy customer, let me tell you. It went back and forth, trying to get the color right and the brightness right.
It was worth it.
It was worth it, and he was very patient with us. So
But the
And
color,
Mona Leverance took the photography, and I've known her since '69. She's like the best photographer I know. I'm very lucky to be working with her. It's been a joy.
these are four color images, I believe, and they're very, very sharp. It's an excellent, as I said, it's very much like an exhibition catalog with the details in the back and the wonderful paintings. How many are there altogether?
Good question.
we have to check the book.
Well,
Oh, it says in the, it says, I don't have my glasses. on.
18 to 47. So that's basically, let's make it 48. Just short of 30 pages of
Paintings.
drawings and paintings.
I think more, but quite a few. And so we'll make sure that people go out and buy this. I want to mention, because we're between paintings here, that your uncle Al went to Europe with your father.
Yeah,
He introduced, he was a friend of a certain celebrity at the Vatican, and he introduced them. Can you explain that that incident, not incident, that meeting?
my cousin Ben told this story. He, it was when he was cardinal in Poland. Al was doing
The Pope.
the Pope.
Okay.
Al was doing a documentary for James Mitchell in Poland, and he spent a week touring Poland with him, and he became the Pope. So Al wanted Dad to meet the Cardinal. I mean, the Pope. Jeez Louise.
Future,
And
future.
Yeah, it was the Paul II, the Polish Pope.
Yes, he was not yet Pope. He was cardinal. Right?
he was, but when he was Pope, Al brought Dad to the Vatican, and they saw a lot of interns going up the staircase. And Dad said to the Pope, Michelangelo carved and placed those stairs. Maybe you don't want people walking on it. And the Pope had this information checked out, and Dad was right. And the staircase has been blocked off since then. But it's amazing that he knew that, you know, he really knew his art history. And I learned it from him. He was really astute with the art history.
Let's go to a third painting now. This is on a more general topic. It's not local or family oriented. It's called Three Musicians. And I wonder if you can tell us something, Susan, about the provenance of Three Musicians.
I think they were street musicians. This was in New York. His palette was a lot darker in New York. It lightened up a lot when he came out to Cape Ann. Um, so I would think that was probably around Central Park. Because he did the checker players at Central Park too. So they were both darker. So Anne Malloy bought a clay print of that painting. So
She's a real musical fan.
yeah, we
So-
both are.
These are not world famous musicians. This isn't
No, they're street musicians.
Exactly.
street musicians, and it looks very much, it feels European to me, almost. I'm not sure what I mean by that, but when I think of street musicians, I think of them being more common in Europe, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
it reminded me of Europe.
He did a painting of the chestnut vendor, and it was on cardboard, which I couldn't believe. I mean, it's a gorgeous painting. So he,
Cardboard, you said.
yeah, yeah. He also did his self-portrait on cardboard when James Eves, we sold the glue clay print of that, and he said, you got to take it out of the frame. And I'm like, all my life, I thought it was on canvas and it was on cardboard. I'm like, oh, I hope I don't break it. So, you know,
Well, where's that three musicians hang?
in Billy's studio.
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, you are.
Yeah. So yes, I'm somewhat of an unwitting curator. I have half of the paintings. Susan has another half, plus most of the drawings in her apartment.
Yeah, I have a portfolio of a lot of his drawings. They were all water damaged by a leak in the studio roof. And we've had to restore all of them. So it's like 150, 250 to restore them, 350 to frame them. He's not a cheap date, but they look great. They look great.
Yeah, yeah.
It's worth it.
So yeah, we're still in the process of restoring a fair bit of his artwork. And that's why we're going with the Giclée route, to have, we'll sell the Giclée prints, and then that money goes into further restoration.
Yeah, they're worth it. He did a lot. I knew, like the artist painting the nude, I knew that he had done a drawing of that, and I go to the portfolio and I found it. Mona cleaned up a lot of the drawings for the book.
Digitally.
Yeah, she's just amazing. And that picture of Billy and me in front of Gabberti's door, that was from two paintings.
Two pictures.
And she made one picture out of it. She's just phenomenal.
It's a very beautiful book, and I want to talk, if I could, for a couple minutes about some of the nuts and bolts here. When did you first decide that you were going to do a book? It moved from just chatting about it to doing it, and when was it actually in your hand?
5 years.
It's 5 years.
At least.
Yeah, it feels like it. It didn't go by like a blur. No, I remember all the effort that went into it.
Something like 2014 to 2019, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Philippe,
and then you wrote the introduction, Susan, which
yeah.
is a family memoir mentioning your family's background in Chicago.
I did that mostly for the family.
Yeah.
The history, I thought that was important. We wouldn't know half the things we did if Grandma's older brother hadn't written a book, The Communists on the American Trail.
What's his name? Jacob?
Yeah, Jacob Spolansky. So I thought it was important for the family. I mean, when we're dead and gone, they'll have that information.
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful book. And I want to ask some other nuts and bolts questions. I always ask writers what they would advise other writers if someone was watching this show and had an idea about doing a tribute book or an artistic book or a family memoir, something that overlapped with what you created? What advice would you give them, Susan?
I don't know. I thought it was, for me, it was important to describe the paintings. And then it was important to describe Dad's life, and how he went to school and how he became what he became. So basically, what I did was document it the best I could, and Billy helped a lot. So, but I thought it was really important to have the list at the back of the book that gives you the size, the medium, you know, I feel that's important.
Now, I know it was a work of love, but it took a while. And Bill, you mentioned a couple of minutes ago that it didn't exactly flash by. Would you
No.
advise other people to think for a long time before they start something, or should they just bang ahead and if they've got a dream, go ahead and do it?
You gotta keep working.
I think it's important, and you have to chip away at it. It's helpful if you've got a lot of content, and we definitely had a lot of content. We had his artwork, so we had plenty to talk about. But if anybody's trying to do a memoir, my mother, Pat, was involved in helping the Gloucester fishermen's wives do memoirs, do their own writing. They had a little project.
Salt spray.
Salt spray, and
She did Charles Olson.
and she did a thing on Charles Olson as well, a profile. She never did one on herself, which was kind of unfortunate. It probably would have been more emotional, and so I can imagine that there's plenty of books out there that have never been written, and that in many ways is a shame.
They need to be written.
Pardon?
They need to be written.
They need to be written, yeah, because memory only goes, it doesn't go very far. You have your children and your grandchildren, and that's about it. And a book will carry it further, hopefully. And
No, look at Homer.
yeah, look at Homer, yeah. Not a flash in the pan.
I want to mention, as you did before we began the
Gilgamesh.
show, your mother, Pat, was on the show, was on the
Right.
writer's block a long time ago. And she was a local activist and author and very, very energetic and talented woman herself.
Right, and a teacher. She got a lot of satisfaction in helping others write their memoirs. These Gloucester fishermen's wives tell their tales, so I mean, Sue is thinking about doing a memoir right now. Is that right?
Well, I want to do an art book of my work, basically for artists, because most art books are written by art historians that really don't know what's going on. They don't know why they did it or how they did it. So I want to give that information so that if anybody wants to paint on aluminum, they'll know how to do it.
Mhm.
Because Dad taught me how to make art. They don't teach that stuff in school now. I mean, they don't even teach script. That's hand-eye coordination.
Mhm.
So it's really important to teach people how to do things.
Yes, spoken as a teacher. And I know you're both teachers, so you both know that experience and how it's important to get the details across, the nitty-gritty details of how something is created.
It
Yeah.
was very rewarding teaching art. I mean, I learned as much from the kids as they learned from me. If you keep yourself open.
I want to thank both of you for being on the show. We're almost out of time, I'm noticing. It's been a delight to talk to you both, Bill Waller and Susan Waller, about this loving creation. I'll flash it back here. Lovely creation to honor your father, Marvin's art and memory. Thanks for being with us.
Okay, thank
You're
you so
welcome.
much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Susan. I want to thank you in our TV audience for being with us on the Writer's Block as well. If you've learned something about Marvin Waller and his art from his children, Susan and William, then the Writer's Block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the Writer's Block. Good night.